hold on. I didn't have, I had my, my volume turned down. How you doing today, Jenny?
Hi, how are you?
So far, so good. I get this on. Hopefully zip forms. The only glitch for today is zip forms was down yesterday.
Oh, wow. Was it really?
Yeah, it was a major hassle. I finally got on, but it was running super, super slow. And no one else could get on. So I went in and grabbed a document or two for some agents who needed them in a timely manner. Let's see what today does.
I think question. I don't know if she's coming on.
Who does?
Yvette.
Right.
About a form or something. I'm not sure if she called you.
She may have called me while I was at lunch, maybe.
Okay.
Oh, there she is. You had a question about a.
I forgot what the question was, Yvette. Don't you have a question?
Oh, so yeah, I did a lease about a month ago, and unfortunately, it's the client turned out to be a bit of a nightmare for the other agent, and I haven't gotten paid. And so now I'm contacting her asking when she sent it, and she's not getting back to me. So I'm just wondering what.
Okay, so let's take it apart a little bit. This is weird. Like there's this whole new zip forms. Oh, I guess. Huh. This is weird. Down zip forms standard. Oh, I have to download. No. All right. Let me focus on you for a second because it's just the three of us. Okay. So you were representing a lessee.
Yeah.
In that. So when the lessee paid their rent, what we would normally, what the listing agent, was there a listing agent in there?
Yes, but she's part of SIG management, property management. And yeah, I know normally they would do different cashier's checks. They didn't do that. And she asked me just to send her the W-9 and so she could get me paid. She did say that. And then she just hasn't paid me.
Okay. So send that information over to, and you've been reaching out to her to no avail?
Yeah, I'm going to give it one more day. Okay. And maybe she'll respond.
And then either, hey, Stacy, either Brian or I can, like Brian could just call and say, hey, there's this outstanding commission for this property and Yvette, and for Yvette, and can we, what's the plan to pay it, right? Okay. But you've done a few others, and you get like one check for Keller Williams, one check for the other agent, and one check for the landlord. Whatever's left over is kind of the way.
Who's Brian?
Brian is our new Merlin.
Oh, okay. Okay,
Merlin has morphed into Brian.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Merlin's going to start doing a real estate business. And so, we've been planning this for several months now. So he's been training Brian for the last couple weeks.
Okay, great.
Right.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to share my screen here, and it's kind of weird because I guess it was down yesterday to put this whole new face on zip forms. And I guess,
that's right. Christina said it was down, right, in the morning yesterday.
Yeah. So they're asking me now to download zip form standard.
I didn't even go on.
This is weird. Oh, let's do this together so that I'll share my my signing on with you. Share screen.
Didn't you do it yesterday, Yvette? No.
What did you say?
Didn't you do a peed yesterday on zip forms or no?
Yeah, it was working for me yesterday, but right now I just signed on and it's making me do something new.
Zip forms. Right.
Yeah.
Does it look something like this?
Let me go back to you. I'm not quite there yet. I just signed on like in a different way. It took me a different route. So let's see.
I always sign with my NAR.
Yeah, I go in through Zip Forms, online.com personally. I don't know. I've always done it that way. And so I never, all right. So Zip Forms Plus is getting a new name starting July 1st. Okay. So Zip Form Plus and Zip Form TMS will now be called Lone Wolf Transactions, Zip Form Edition. Rest assured, the functionality of the program will not be changing. The feature you know and depend on will remain the same, including MLS Connect, Zip Form Mobile, and Zip Vault, and so on and so forth. Lone Wolf Transactions, Zip Form Edition, will remain a member benefit for all CAR members, and you will continue to access it in the way you always do at CAR.org, which I do not, but or go through your brokerage. As we start to move this new name over the next few weeks, please contact us with any questions. That's real. All right, so.
Is that the first time you're seeing the Lone Wolf? It's always been Lone Wolf for me.
This is it for me.
Oh, okay. Jenny, has it been Lone Wolf for you the whole time too?
What does that mean, lone wolf?
Exactly. No, this is new today. This is, so I guess, to access Lone Wolf Zip Form. Let's try that, okay?
I think I do like Zip Forms Plus or something.
That's exactly how mine looks all the time.
Yeah, but now we're going back to so it's just a new name.
Okay.
You have encountered an error while trying to load this page. Sorry for the inconvenience. Okay. All right, so let's try that again. Sorry about this, guys, but this is a weird little. Oh, all right. This time it went right in. Resolved. All right. This time it went right in. So there we go. It's got a little wolf in the corner. I don't have to do anything. A little different, but not right. Let's get to business here. And I believe this is the contract we were working on. And Jenny, correct me if I'm wrong. I told you to remember where we were.
14E.
All right, excellent. And did the two classes, part one and two, get uploaded yet?
I haven't seen them on there. Have you, Jenny?
I haven't looked recently. One wasn't there a few weeks ago, but I haven't looked recently.
I haven't.
Dave had access to those. I was hoping that he said they was going to get them in there. Upload. His back problems have really sent him off. Mm. 14
E.
B?
E like Edward.
E. All right. Notice of buyers and sellers to perform. Very, very important vehicle. Let me go to full screen here. And scroll back through this. Get to it.
Joey?
Yes.
I missed contract 2. Where would I be able to see it?
Oh, I'm gonna jump on Ed right after this. You missed part 2.
Yes.
Ed was supposed to upload it for me onto the office YouTube page. It may not have been done, and so I'll make sure as soon as
Okay.
as soon as we get off of this, right?
Thank you. Thank you.
No problem.
I know I wasn't feeling well last week. That's why I missed the whole thing.
Oh, good.
So,
All right.
Maybe.
And again, this is a workshop environment. Just let you know if you guys have a question, just jump right in. Okay. Oh, let me hit. Sorry, guys. I almost forgot to record this. You can see my screen, okay, right? Everybody, you can see my screen. Oh, it is recording. Good.
yes.
John, you're recording this? Good. Got it. Okay, 14E. Notice to buyer or seller to perform. The notice of buyer or seller to perform is a tool we have, okay? And that tool is used when there's a contractual term or agreement that is not being performed to the timelines set forth in the contract. This allows the buyer, if the seller needs to do something that they're not doing, to send to the buyer and say, hey, to send to the seller and say, hey, you said you would do this per the contract. You have not done this. Here is a 2-day notice to perform. You can change that in the contract to extend it, but I think 2 days is a reasonable amount of time to get that term completed. And if you do not do that within the period of time, the 2 days, then I have the right to, that will be a breach of this contract, and I have the right to move on, to cancel. And that goes with a buyer or seller. It's one of the few tools that the seller has to cancel, right? And it's used to move, keep the train on the tracks. Yvette, did you have a question?
I can't see the contract. I just see everybody like.
Oh, all right. I'm sorry. So I probably didn't share properly. Is anybody else not seeing it? Everybody's not seeing it.
Benny?
We all don't see it.
Oh, I am so sorry. Let me
look at you, Joey, when you're talking. So I don't even, I can't see the contract.
Interesting, but not that. Interesting. Share screen.
It's always so small. I can't see it.
I mean, did that help?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
All right, sorry about that. All right, so here we go. So it's 14 where we are in the contract. Under time periods. All right, so the notice to perform is a separate document that is used in the transaction prior to the expiration of the applicable timeline for the other party to remove the contingency or to do some other action that was part of the terms of the contract, okay? And the seller could use it and the buyer could use it, and it stops people from holding the deal hostage, either party. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Another idiosyncrasy of it is that you can give it with the 2-day here, with the default 2-day notice to perform, you can give it 2 days prior to the expiration. Okay, so if you have a 17-day appraisal contingency, you can deliver this notice to perform, and you want to keep those timelines really tight. You can deliver this notice to perform on day 15, so that on day 17, they have to either remove that contingency or you have the right to quit. Okay, so a seller who is really who timelines are important to, or they have a maybe they have a backup offer for more money. happens sometimes. They are, able to give this notice to perform 2 days prior to to expiration. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And here's the other thing about notice to perform. A lot of people see it as punitive. I just see it as a tool that we use to keep the timelines of the contract in place. Okay. If you need it, if I'm serving you this on an expiration of a contingency, that means you didn't call me and ask me for an extension. That means you didn't send over an extension. That means that you didn't communicate with me in any way that you're going to need more time, right? Because if you did, you would be sending me an extension of time and I would be processing that accordingly. But, agents, sometimes they take the position of just bury your head in the sand and, we'll get to it when it comes through, right? It's not a good plan. So use this document when necessary, okay? If the 2 days were up and they still did not perform on it and your seller wanted to quit the contract or get out of the contract, they have the right to, and then the next document would be a cancellation. Okay, that's what comes after notice to perform is cancellation. Now, also be aware. I'll go down a small rabbit hole that this notice to perform is useless, or it has to have a pain point, right? And the pain point is cancellation. If your buyer or seller delivering this notice to perform doesn't really want to get out of the deal, the 2 days are going to go up and you're all right. Okay, we didn't do what you asked us to do. Are you going to cancel on us? And sometimes that's not exactly what the buyer or seller is willing to do when they serve this notice to perform. So be cognizant of that. And if there's no teeth behind this, then it kind of loses a little bit of its power. All right. Any questions about the notice to perform?
So it has to be for a reason?
It's a notice to tell them, you said, per the contract, you said you will do this. You have not done it in the timelines necessary, in the timelines dictated in the contract. So that's what it's used for. What else would you use it for, Amal? What are you thinking?
So it takes longer to get to freeway.
What was that?
I wasn't sure if I need to, or maybe to remind them that in 2 days, it's going to be the time. So if they need to finish the deal, like to go ahead and do it with no delay. Maybe to remind them.
Sure, but it has to be reminding them something about the timelines, and it can only be. It's not like a gentle reminder. It's a specific tool for a specific activity.
So if they didn't perform, then the deal would be canceled.
You have the right to serve them with a cancellation. Yes, you can legally cancel the contract based on their non-performance on a term of the contract. After serving them a notice to perform, you're giving them 2 days to complete that task that they said they would do. If they don't do it, you can walk away legally, buyer or seller.
Thank you.
All right. Effective buyer's removal of contingency. If buyer removes in writing any contingencies or cancellation rights unless otherwise specified in writing, buyer shall conclusively be deemed to have completed all buyer's investigations, review of reports and other applicable information and disclosures pertaining to the contingency or the cancellation right. So by removing your contingencies, right, you are saying, we'll go for the standard contingencies: appraisal, loan, investigations, right? By removing any or all of them, you are saying, we have done our research, we have made the appropriate applications, we have gathered all the information we've needed, we've had a conversation with you about any kind of discrepancy in valuation based on those findings, and we are satisfied. Now, once you take off that contingency, once you use the removal of contingency form to remove the contingency, your earnest money deposit is vulnerable. Not up until that point. If there's a contingency in place and you as the buyer decide to step away from this deal based on that contingency, then you are due your money back, okay? But if you remove all your contingencies or give up the right to contingencies on your offer, then and only then is your earnest money vulnerable, all right? And that's up to 3% per this contract. So be aware that, the assumption is that if you're removing contingencies, then you have all the information you need, or you don't have any concern about those pieces. So if you're an all cash deal, you don't have a loan contingency. You can still maintain an appraisal contingency. You might have a inspection contingency, right? And so you go through your process, you do your investigations, you make your applications, and after the time period, you are contractually obliged to remove those contingencies. This contract is an active removal of contingencies, not a passive removal, which means that if you have a 17-day appraisal contingency, on day 18, the appraisal contingency doesn't just go away. You have to sign a document. Your client has to sign the document, saying that I am comfortable removing those contingencies. If they don't send that in, that's one of those instances where the seller will give you a notice to perform. Okay? Questions? Okay. So close of escrow. Before buyer or seller may cancel this agreement for failure of the other party to close escrow pursuant to this agreement, buyer or seller must first deliver to the other party a demand to close escrow. This is the way out the door. Notice to perform, didn't perform, and then a demand to close escrow, a DCE, right? The DCE shall be signed by the applicable buyer or seller and give the other party at least 3 days after delivery to escrow. A DCE may not be delivered any earlier than 3 days prior to the scheduled close of escrow. Okay, so it accounts for this 3 days. So if you have a seller who's really got a trigger finger, this would be something that you might even want to shorten these days, right? If you're representing the seller. If you're representing the buyer, you want as much time as you possibly can get to remedy before they cancel on you. Questions? This whole section is about how to exit the contract legally, all right? Based on the terms of the contract. So effective cancellation on deposits. If buyer or seller gives written notice of cancellation pursuant to the rights duly exercised under the terms of this agreement, the parties agree to sign mutual instructions to cancellation, to cancel the sale, excuse me, and escrow, cancel the sale and escrow and release the deposits, if any, to the party entitled to the funds, less fees, costs incurred by that party. In other words, if there are any escrow fees that were incurred through, notaries or overnighting of documents, anything like that. Escrow has a right to recoup those fees. Fees and costs may be payable to service providers and vendors for service and products provided during escrow. Yeah, if you did a termite inspection and it was getting paid through escrow, all of those things need to be paid before you get your money back. Fees and costs may be payable to service providers and vendors for services and products provided during escrow, except as specified below. Release of funds will require mutual signed lease instructions from the parties, judicial decisions, or arbitration awards. Okay, so guys, it's not always a slam dunk for the seller to or the buyer to get out of the deal. It has to be mutual agreement, right? Or judicial decision or arbitration award. Hopefully it's the first, because everything else is a real hassle. Most times, if everything's done properly, monies are released minus any kind of cost, and everybody goes on their way, as disgruntled as they may be, sellers, buyers. But sometimes, when, if a seller's, I've seen it more when a seller has the right to cancel, the buyer kind of holds it hostage a little bit for a period of time, just because maybe they don't feel like it, and they don't sign this release. And that's when it could go to a judicial decision or arbitration, which takes a lot more time, and we really don't want to get to that, but it does happen, just so you know. All right, so let me read on. If either party fails to execute mutual instructions to cancel escrow, one party may make a written demand to escrow holder for the deposit. And so it's the CAR form there. Escrow holder, upon receipt, shall promptly deliver notice of the demand to the other party. If within 10 days after escrow holder's notice, the other party does not object to the demand, escrow holder shall disperse the deposit to the party making the demand. If escrow holder complies with the preceding process, each party shall be deemed to have released escrow holder from any and all claims or liability related to the dispersal of the deposit. Escrow holder at its discretion may nonetheless require mutual cancellation instructions. A party may be subject to civil penalty of up to $1,000 for refusal to sign cancellation instructions if no good faith dispute exists as to who is entitled to the deposit funds. Are you getting what that's saying there? So that party who is not executing on the cancellation, you have to, it happens, more often than I like. There's the buyer demand or the seller's demand to return deposit. As soon as you give that to the escrow holder, The other side has 10 days to object to the demand, right? It doesn't take much to object to the demand. It's just telling the escrow holder, you know, no, I don't agree with that, and I want to fight it. But if they don't, theoretically, the escrow holder can release it. Now, escrow holders, they're not happy about releasing that without signed instructions from both sides. A lot of times they will not. And as you see down here at the bottom, escrow holder at its discretion may nonetheless require mutual cancellation for instructions. Okay, so it becomes a little squirrely. It's a very fluid moment for the deal. Do you guys get that? Questions?
Well, what a seller's demand, I mean, only the buyer is putting up a deposit. So what would the seller have? What money would the seller, what money would the buyer have?
Seller, a little chat that the buyer's exiting the deal and wants to just hold their money and make it a little more uncomfortable for them a longer period of time, so they won't sign the cancellation. That happens sometimes. If the seller feels like you're being shady about the reason why you're getting out, like you asked for a very, very large credit or reduction of price based on what you found, and the seller's like, no, I'm good. No, I'm not going to do any of that, nor am I going to counter. People get their feelings hurt, and going out the door, it's a way to just cause a little pain, is what people use.
Buyer, if the buyer gives a buyer demand, there's no money he can get from the seller because the seller hasn't put any money down.
No. He's trying to get his own money back.
Oh, okay.
This is you're canceling the deal. I want my 3% earnest money back. That's the buyer's drive on it. This is to get their money back, not to sell. This is not to sue. This is just about canceling the deal and getting my earnest money back.
And the seller demand would be, I want to keep the deposit.
The buyer would give the seller a demand to return the deposit. If the seller was buyer, yeah. It's just about trying to get the other one off the fence to sign the cancellation.
Yeah, okay.
They can all have some idiosyncratic reason to not want to perform the cancellation in a timely manner. It gets a little childish. Anything else about this is very important. These paragraphs here are very important. It's to understand this is a way to uncouple from the contract, right? And so it could be a little, as much as they try to keep the process as black and white as possible, there's lots of gray areas in this uncoupling, right? Final verification of condition.
So I have a question. So if the seller didn't approve the cancellation, the buyer has to pay $1,000?
No, that's not what that's saying.
Oh, okay. What's that $1,000 penalty?
It's saying if any party is found to be jerking with the process and kind of holding people hostage, holding the deal hostage, just for no good faith reason, right? See what it says here? a party may be subject to a civil penalty of up to $1,000 for refusal to sign cancellation instructions if no good faith dispute exists as to who is entitled to the deposit funds. So if you go to small claims court and this goes before a judge and the judge finds that you're really just holding this up out of spite, he can fine you $1,000, right?
I see. Thank you.
That would have to be a judicial decision. Is that good? All right.
Good.
Final verification of condition says the buyer shall have the right to make a final verification of the property within 5 days, right? Or the number you put in there, but 5 days is a good day. That's saying prior to the close of escrow, not as a contingency of the sale, but solely to confirm that the property is maintained pursuant to paragraph 11. Repairs have been completed as agreed, and seller has complied with seller's other obligations under the agreement. So let's go back to pursuant to 11. 11 is where, is about condition, that you are making an offer and based on a certain level of condition, and then that condition should be what it is, what it looks like on the day that you take possession of it, and or 5 days before you take possession of it. So that is the reasonable expectation, that I made an offer and with a certain condition, that and that it was maintained to that level based on the condition of that house at acceptance of the offer. Okay, if during the escrow period the house catches on fire, that's going to change the matter. If you have a pipe break, if the heating system blows up, there's a lot of different things that could happen. And if it happens before you close the property, you can go back to the seller, and that kind of opens up negotiation again. Okay. Sometimes, oh, beautiful chandelier. I'm buying, one of the things I love about this house is this beautiful chandelier. And you go back for your 5-day walkthrough, and before escrow closes, and they've replaced the chandelier with a Home Depot, $30 light fixture. Whoa, never came up, never discussed it. It was attached to the building. You have every right to expect that chandelier to be there, right? It's one of those things, comes up quite often. Always do your final walkthrough. Don't pass on it. I know a lot of agents just, they just sign off on the final walkthrough. You do it with your client also. There was a rug down. Now everybody's moved out, the rug's gone. There's a giant stain on the wood. You don't want to figure that out on 2 days before the property closes, because you know what happened by then? Funding money has been sent over. You're setting up for recording, and you've lost all of your teeth, right? You lost any bite you have. You lost leverage. Okay, that's why 5 days is good. They still have the lender hasn't sent over the money, and it's not set up for recording, and it gives you plenty of time to kind of work out any issues that might have come up in that walkthrough. Questions? Great. All right. Repairs shall be completed prior to final verification of condition, unless otherwise agreed in writing. So you want to get any repairs done that the seller is has agreed to do. You want that inspected in this same time period, the 5 days before. You want to, because seller's expense may be performed by seller, or through others, provided that the work complies with the applicable laws, including governmental permit, inspection, and approval requirements. Repairs shall be performed in a good, skillful manner with materials of quality and appearance comparable to existing materials. It is understood that exact restoration of appearance or cosmetic items following all repairs may not be possible, but the seller shall obtain invoices and paid receipts for repairs performed by others, prepare a written statement indicating the repairs performed by seller and the date of such repairs, and provide copies of invoices and paid receipts and statements to buyers prior to the final verification of condition. So that is why more often than not, we would take either credit or reduction of price before we have the seller do the fix, right? It's easier for the seller, and you have jurisdiction over the quality of work that's done, right? Where you otherwise may not. What happens a lot with flippers or contractor involved sales, that the contractor or flipper wants, or investor wants to do the repairs themselves because they have a mechanism to do so. In that case, I would not just trust myself as the buyer and my realtor, who is not a contractor, and I would bring in a seasoned professional in that certain realm. If it was a roof repair or plumbing repair or an electricity repair, that I would bring somebody in there to make sure it was done correctly. Does that make sense?
So that's the opportunity you have when you do the walkthrough, if it isn't done, to ask for another reduction in price to get it done?
Well, it opens up negotiation to a certain level again, right? It's not a contingency. You don't have more time. It's not necessarily a way to, it's not an easy way out, Jenny, right? Yeah. But it gives you enough time to get that remedied.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You could say, all right, you did not do the work you said we're going to do. We have two choices here. We can stop the funding and prolong the closing. Or you can give me, the money that was going to, for my estimate of it, or you can get it done real quick. Yeah. One of those three things, right? Prorations of property taxes and other items. So you guys understand that in California, per Prop 13, the tax basis for any particular property, the property tax basis for any particular property is adjusted at certain times, right? And per Prop 13, it's on the transfer of property, right? So the tax basis goes up to based on the sale price of the property. Most times that number goes up. So you have a seller whose tax basis was based on when he bought it, and now your tax basis is moving up to a new level, and that's 12.5% of the sale price. What that looks, it's $12,500 on $1 million. So if your taxes, if you bought a house for $1 million, that would be $12,500 is your tax basis. From there, every year, you get a raise in your taxes of either 1% to 3%, unless there's an additional assessment, which there hasn't been for a while. 1% to 3% of your tax basis. Of that, if you're $1 million house, of that 12,500. Does that make sense?
That's good to know.
Yeah. If you add on square footage or do a major renovation on the property, you can also you can also get a raise in your tax basis. Right? I added 500 square feet onto my house, and I think they raised my tax basis around $1,100, if that means anything to you. I didn't add any additional bedrooms or bathrooms. I just extended a family room, is what it came down to.
So if you added square footage to the house, they add 1 to 3% of the value of the house?
I don't know what the equation is for that. Ask that one more time.
You said you added
to do with adding value to the house or a square footage. That 1 to 3% is every year your tax basis moves up 1 to 3% based on what the state of California determines is the tax rate for that year, right? They kind of move it around a little bit.
Okay, so the estimate, so every year they estimate the raise for property taxes 1 to 3%?
Yes, 1 to 3% of that, of your tax basis, not of
tax
the
basis.
property.
Okay, and if you added like work on the house, more square footage, then how much is that?
I don't know what that equation is. It's takes a special assessment. It's according to how much you added, what functionality you added. If you start adding bedrooms or bathrooms, then that might be a little bit more. But just to give you an idea, like I said, I added 500 square feet and my tax basis went up $1,100. Right? That's a question for the city more than I don't know the equation that they use. But the point that this particular, what's important for you to know when your buyers are buying a house, that in the transfer of this house, you're not transferring the seller's tax basis, but the seller has paid up to the day of transfer, right? And past, right? Because you only pay twice a year. And so you're never like, if somebody's closing on the day that the new tax bill is due. But in 99.9% of the cases, you are falling you're falling short of when the next payment is due. So they prorate it up to that day, and then you will pay part of your closing cost is paying the seller back from that day to when the new tax bill is done at their rate still, okay? So at closing, property tax is rendered at the seller's rate of taxation. But the new buyer has a new tax basis. So they will render it at that point on the basis, and then in like 3 months, you will get a bill that fills in the gap between the seller's rate of taxation and your new rate of taxation for that time. Does that make sense? Somebody say yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. And so if that's a special, that only happens once, and that's just to adjust to the new tax rate, property tax rate. Okay. All right. Broker's compensation and scope of duty. Again, it's a reiteration of what our fiduciary duties are and what is expected of us. and how the compensation works, right? Our contract, the seller and the listing agent are contractually bound to pay a commission. We, the buyer, in this particular case, the buyer's agent, is not contractually bound to the seller, but to the representing broker. Okay, so in the listing agreement, the seller agrees to pay the listing brokerage a gross percentage. The seller's representative in that listing contract agrees to pay a cooperating brokerage a percentage of that gross commission. Our contract is with, when we enter into this contract, or when the clients enter into this contract with each other, this is not between brokerages. This is a contract between buyer and seller. In the MLS, the advertised CSO is, for cooperating brokerages is established as a contract, right? So what you just be careful. Sometimes you'll get a little bait and switch. Once or twice in my career, you go on, print out the property profile, and then you see it there. It says 2.5. Then you get into contract, and down the line it's like, oh, that's only 2% commission, not 2.5. And by that time they've gone into the MLS and changed it to 2%, kind of try to get a little shady with it. It happens every once in a while. So always print out and save the property profile, just as a, because that's the contractual agreement. That's the contractual expectation from broker to broker, is to pay on what is advertised in the MLS.
Is that regard the buyer's agent?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah, we're going over the, this is the RPA, so it would be the buyer's agent, from the buyer's agent. The seller's agent has a contractual agreement with the seller already. But yes, the buyer's agent can get shady every once in a while. It doesn't happen that often. I've been in the business 20 years. It might have happened twice.
I did have where the agent said, okay, so the deal is we'll just give you so much cash. And it wasn't
time.
With one of the leases, the other agent said to me, okay, so if the deal closes, we'll just give you like so much cash. And I was silent thinking, well, first of all, that doesn't sound like 2.5%. And why is he talking about cash? But the deal never went through, so I never addressed it, or I just was silent.
So never take cash.
Yeah.
All right. And yeah, just don't take cash, and don't bite on that at all. You know, especially on a lease. A lease is easy. You just have your client, if you're representing the lessee, your client's cutting the checks anyway. This is how we do it.
Yeah.
Do the math. This is your brokerage piece. This is my brokerage piece. This is what you get. Make sure you try to get paid before the tenancy takes place, right?
Yeah.
It's or as soon as your clients move in is when they usually do it. As soon as the contract.
So where do you get the money from the lease? Where do you get the money?
From the lessee.
From the lessee.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Which is a great point. That's a good response. I was just silent because I was struck by that statement. But that's a good response to say.
Yeah, it's easy to say. My brokerage will not allow me to take cash. Or a personal check for that matter. No personal check you're going to take. It's preferable to get a money order or a cashier's check, but sometimes you're taking the client. The client bounces if your client's bouncing your check, he's bouncing his rent check, he's bouncing it all, right? That's not good. All right, representative capacity. If one or more parties is signing this agreement in a representative capacity and not for him or himself or an individual, then the party shall so indicate in paragraph 31, 32 and attach to representative capacity. This is a legal form that signs over the right, signing rights to any particular individual, right? I'm going to Europe and I'm closing my house and I have to have my brother sign all the documentation. Okay, I sign a representative capacity and that's all good. And I believe that document needs to be notarized also. And you want to have, the agent should have a copy of that, save a copy of that, as well as deliver a copy of it to the representing agent if you're representing the person who is doing the representative capacity. All right. Okay. Joint escrow instructions to the escrow holder. The following paragraphs are or applicable portions thereof of this agreement. Of this agreement constitute the joint escrow instructions of buyer and seller to the escrow holder. It's saying the terms set forth in this agreement get transferred to escrow. Escrow takes those terms and executes on the terms of that agreement. Any alteration of those terms has to be a signed declaration from both parties. It has to be mutual agreement. Okay, escrow is a non-biased, neutral party who is there to make sure that the terms of the agreement are executed on the timelines that both parties agreed to in the contract. Again, any alteration of that, escrow cannot unilaterally change anything. They must get mutual agreement, right? All right, so a copy of the agreement, including any counteroffers and agenda, shall be delivered to escrow within 3 days after acceptance, right? Buyer and seller should authorize escrow holder to accept and rely on copies and signatures as defined in the agreement as originals to open escrow and for other purposes of escrow. The validity of this agreement as between buyer and seller is not affected by whether or when escrow holder signs this agreement. Okay. The timelines set forth in the RPA, in the fully executed RPA, do not get determined by when escrow opens. If you sign an agreement on a Friday and escrow doesn't open until Monday, the timelines of the agreement start on Friday when the last signature is in place, right? When the date of that last signature is when the timelines start. And so, and I'll go just a little deeper on that and say, timelines, day one, you get it signed on a Friday, anytime. Day one is Saturday, not Friday. Day two is Sunday. Day three is Monday. If you need to have your earnest money in by day 3, you have to have it in by Monday. Okay, and it's the same with it's the same if it was on a Tuesday. Day 1 is on Wednesday. It's after the first 24-hour period. Does that make sense? You're not counting day one as a day that you signed it, but the consecutive day afterwards, after it, right? The only way the timelines change or get altered or affected by a weekend or a holiday is when those timelines, when one of those timelines ends on a weekend or a holiday, in which case it moves to the next business day. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Brokers are a party to the escrow for the sole purpose of compensation pursuant to paragraph 18A and paragraph D of the section titled Real Estate Brokers on page 10. Buyer and seller irrevocably assigned to brokers compensation specified in paragraph 18A and irrevocably entrust escrow holder to disperse those funds to brokers at close of escrow or pursuant to any other mutually executed cancellation agreement. Compensation instructions can be amended or revoked only with the written consent of brokers, buyers, and sellers. Shall release and hold harmless escrow holder from any liability resulting from escrow holder's payment to brokers. Again, escrow holder is there to execute on the terms. If you've all agreed, they're going to execute on the terms. All right. D is just saying that they're going to let you know with a verification of buyer's deposit enters escrow. All right, now we're starting to get into earnest money. All right, and with earnest money, the earnest money is, well, it's called earnest money. And it's saying, hey, I am serious about buying this property. And I'm going to give you 3% of the value of this property or the offer value. I'm going to give you 3% traditionally to show you my intent. If after I do all of my investigations and you give me all the information I need and we are still on the same page, I'm going to remove those contingencies and I'll be all in. But until then, this 3% is about, it's about intention, right? And it validates my offer, okay? And not until I remove all the contingencies is that money vulnerable, right? And it's, and per this contract, it's only the 3% that's vulnerable, okay? Not a penny more. They can only receive up to 3% in compensation after you've removed all of your contingencies and you want to walk away from the deal, okay? And or you have not performed per the terms of the agreement and you're canceled. Only then can the seller go after it, and you want to make sure that your clients sign liquidated damages, which is the next section here, and dispute resolution, okay? The idea is to keep these real estate disputes out of the judicial system, clogging up the judicial system. You know, the transfer of high-valued property between two non-professional buyers and sellers, you can imagine that there's a lot of opportunity for stupidity and feelings and spite and all kinds of things, right? So by agreeing to liquidated damages, remedies for buyer's breach of contract and liquidated damage, everybody's agreeing to the limitation of up to 3%. The 3%, even when you get to that, if you ever get to that place, the 3% isn't a consolation prize. The 3% in that case is saying, is compensation from being in contract with you. I have lost that money. put money down on a new apartment or a house. I paid movers. I lost opportunities. It doesn't take much to quantify the loss, but just know that don't let your sellers believe that it's like some consolation prize. Oh, they walked away, but you got their 3%. It's not that easy, okay? And there's a process associated with that. Signing this remedies clause and dispute resolution is kind of laying out the path. And do you guys have time for me to go? I'd like to go through this part. I know it's 2 o'clock. Is everybody on board for another 15 or 20 minutes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So let's start with remedies for buyer. Any clause added by the parties specifying a remedy, such as release or forfeiture of deposit or making a deposit non-refundable for failure of buyer to complete the purchase in violation of this agreement, shall be deemed invalid unless the clause independently satisfies the statutory liquidated damages requirements set forth in the civil code. All right, this is protecting buyers from doing something stupid to themselves, or right, so just giving away money. So liquidated damages, so any kind of alteration of this total agreement that exposes the earnest money outside of the constraints of this is not allowable. They're saying they can only get up to 3%, and they can only get up to 3% when these things happen, right? After the buyer has taken off all their contingencies, after the, if the buyer does not perform to the terms of the contract, okay? So liquidated damages, if buyer fails to complete this purchase because of buyer's default, seller shall retain as liquidated damages the deposit actually paid. If the property is a dwelling with no more than 4 units, one of which buyer intends to occupy, then the amount retained shall be no more than 3% of the purchase price. Excuse me, I forgot. I stopped short there. Any excess shall be returned to the buyer, except as provided in paragraph 14H. Release of funds will require mutual signed release instructions from both parties, buyer and seller, judicial decision or arbitration award. At the time of any increased deposit, buyer and seller shall sign a separate liquidated damages provision incorporating the increased deposit as liquidated damages. So the only way to make, so if your client just says, yeah, I'll just put I'll put all the money in escrow right now and show them how interested I am in the property. And if they do nothing more than that, only 3%, and they decide to jump at the end, only 3% is vulnerable. But if they sign this RID form, and which creates a new basis for liquidated damages, then they're giving up that right. Try not to let your clients do that. I've never done it in 20 years. I've never done it. Some people get a little excited about, try to aggressively, get a deal, right? And to perk the seller. Probably not the best way to do it. My suggestion, right? So that's the payout. How do we resolve any issues? So that's a dispute by signing this dispute resolution, by initialing it here, which I absolutely encourage you to get done every time. You'll get a lawyer every once in a while who's like, I ain't gonna sign that because, you know, it's my job. You know, I'll go and sue them. It doesn't cost me anything to sue them. I'll go to court, da, da, da. Why would I want to, you know, I lose power in arbitration mediation. Please, a smart lawyer will not say that. He understands that this is not worth his time and this is a more stealthy process, but it's cumbersome. All right. Also, while I'm on the lawyer client, redaction. You will get a lawyer client who wants to start redacting or rewriting the contract. And he should know this, but it's often a challenging conversation. When you start, this contract has been litigated. Okay, it's stood up in court. Every part of it is stood up in court, right? It's been litigated because in the state of California, we turn over a bunch of houses and people have disputes all the time. Once you start to redact, and more even to the point, some lawyers like to rewrite the language of something that's in there already. I don't like that word. I want to change it to this. That opens them up for more exposure, for more liability. You're changing the contract. Any physical change to the set contract other than the options is opening up your client to greater liability across the board. That's just a gross general statement, even for a lawyer, okay? But in dispute resolution, we are agreeing to keep it out of the judicial system. So the parties agree to mediate any dispute or claim arising between them out of this agreement or any resulting transaction before resorting to arbitration or court action through CAR, Real Estate Mediation Center, or consumersmediation.org, or through any other mediation provider or service mutually agreed to by the parties. The parties also agreed to mediate any dispute or claims with brokers who in writing agreed to such mediation prior to or within a reasonable time after the dispute. So this is just saying we're agreeing to mediation first. If mediation is non-binding, okay, and the intent of mediation is not always that satisfying for both parties or for either party. So most times, because mediation is about compromise. I know you want this, but what will you accept? It's not about right or wrong. It's about compromise, all right? Arbitration, if mediation does not work, and mediation costs vary, it could be, but it's a couple $1,000s for each party, right? Arbitration is the next level, and arbitration can be binding. It's usually done by a retired judge or justice or an attorney with at least 5 years of residential real estate law experience. And they make a judgment. That judgment is binding, but if either party doesn't like that judgment, they can move to a judicial, they can sue. They can, right? You're basically countersuing. It's like, I'm not paying them that, let him sue me, right? Or I'm going to sue him back. All right, so the parties agree that any dispute or claim in law or equity arising between them out of the agreement or any resulting transaction, which is not settled through mediation, shall be decided by a neutral, binding arbitration. The parties also agree to arbitrate any disputes or claims with brokers who in writing agree to such arbitration prior to or within a reasonable time after the dispute or claims presented to the broker. The arbitrator shall be a retired judge or justice or any attorney with at least 5 years of residential real estate law experience, unless the parties mutually agree to a different arbitrator. The parties shall have the right to discovery in accordance with civil code. In all other respects, the arbitration shall be conducted in accordance with Title IX, Part 3 of the Code of Civil Procedure. Judgment judging upon the award of the arbitrator may be entered into the court having jurisdiction. So arbitration comes up, the arbitrator comes up with a final judgment, and if need be, they can move that judgment to a judicial court to enforce it. Enforcement of this agreement to arbitrate shall be governed by the Federal Arbitration Act. Exclusions from this arbitration agreement are specified in paragraph 22C. Notice, big bold letters, this is what they want you to know. By initialing in the space below, you are agreeing to have any dispute arising out of the matters included in the arbitration of disputes provision decided by neutral arbitration as provided by California law, and you are giving up any rights you might possess to have this dispute litigated in court or a jury trial. Okay? If you go through all of this and still, let me finish. Oh, I'm sorry. And appeals. Unless those rights are specifically included in the arbitration of disputes provision, if you refuse to submit to arbitration after agreeing to the provision, you may be compelled to arbitrate under the authority of the California Code of Civil Procedure. Your agreement to this arbitration provision is voluntary. You are not, nobody's forced to sign this. It's highly recommended. We have read and understand the foregoing and agree to submit disputes arising out of arbitration, right? So first, if you sign both of these as a buyer or seller, you agree to go to mediation first. Mediation doesn't work, you go to arbitration. Arbitration is a binding arbitration that will make a judgment on it, and you are bound to that judgment. The next step, if you wanted to go past that, would be to appeal through the judicial system. All right. Exclusions, what do you think that is? What is excluded from binding arbitration is the following matters are excluded from mediation and arbitration: a judicial or non-judicial foreclosure or other actions or proceedings to enforce a deed of trust, mortgage, or installment land sale contract as defined in civil code. Any unlawful detainer action, any matter that is within the jurisdiction of probate, small claims, or bankruptcy court. All of that is outside of arbitration mediation. All right, and these are outside influences. These are not usually, none of these, none of these really address the two parties involved in it. Usually something out of an outside influence that would overturn this agreement. All right, preservation of actions. The following shall not constitute a waiver nor violation of the mediation arbitration provisions: the filing of a court action to preserve a statute of limitations, the filing of a court action to enable recording of a notice of pending action, less pendants, for order of attachment, receivership, injunction, or other provisional remedies, or the filings of a mechanics lien. Okay, so you can't get out of arbitration, once you agree, you can't get out of arbitration and mediation by filing a less pendants or an injunction or some other mechanics lien against the property, right? you still have to go through it. Brokers shall not be obligated nor compelled to mediate or arbitrate unless they agree to do so in writing. Any broker participating in mediation or arbitration shall not be deemed a party to this agreement. Okay? Again, this is an agreement between buyer and seller, not broker and seller, not broker and buyer on either side. Okay, I am going to put a pin in it there for, we're almost, you know what? We are at the end of this, right? Everything else is escape. Selection of service providers, use of multiple listing service, and attorney fees. Oh, so the attorney fees is that the losing party in mediation arbitration, the prevailing party can ask for legal fees. Assigning the property, buyer shall not assign all or any part of this buyer's interest in this agreement without first having obtained written separate agreement from the seller. So I can't get into a contract and say, oh, you know, Jenny, I got this house in contract. I'm going to give you the contract and you're going to take it over. I'm going to sign the contract to you. I can't do that unilaterally. I have to have the seller's agreement and a signed agreement. And sometimes in those situations, like sometimes somebody's going into a partnership or moving the deal into a corporation. So in that case, I will do Joey Sakovich or a signee when I write the offer. And by the seller accepting that contract, they accept my my ability to assign that contract. Does that make sense? All right, equal housing opportunity. We are not just a proponent of it, that we are legally bound to it. In terms and condition of the offer, this is a statement saying, hey, you're telling us something in this contract. Our belief is that what you're telling us is true. Broker's belief is that what you're telling us is true. If anything is fraudulent, then, or if anything is incorrect or purposely deceiving, that is fraud. All right. Time is of the essence. Also, again, it's about intentionality. Neither this agreement nor any provision in it may be extended, amended, modified, altered, or changed except in writing signed by buyer and seller. Any alterations to the timelines, again, you are making this offer with these timelines. There's no gray area in that. Okay, it's a contractual agreement. It's a legal agreement. It's like, yeah, I know I said 17 days for buyers' investigations, but you know that's never the case. It always takes more time, blah, blah, blah. No, it says 17 days. It's your client's obligation to get that work done in 17 days. Get that inspection done in 17 days. Get any remedies worked out. And that goes for both parties. Definitions, acceptance, agreement, card form, close of escrow, and such. It's pretty straightforward. Expiration of offer. The default is, I believe, 3 days. Let me see. This offer shall be deemed. Revoked, and the deposit, if any, shall be returned to buyer unless the offer is signed by seller and a copy of the signed offer is personally received by buyer, or I usually put my name in here, right? Who is authorized to receive it by 5 o'clock on the third day after the offer is signed by buyer, okay? If you can extend this if need be, if they don't get back, sometimes they say, all right, we're going to, this is Thursday and next Tuesday is when we're going to review offers. And then you'll always get an overzealous agent who writes on that Friday, right? And per the contract, this offer goes away in 3 days. So by Monday at 5 o'clock, this offer is no longer valid. But if they're reviewed on Tuesday, you know, in the counteroffer, if you're still interested as a buyer, they can come back and tie this contract back into the timelines. All offers or your offer dated such and such is the timelines are extended to meet this counteroffer and any future documents assigned to it, right? So you kind of you fill in that space a little bit, opposed to them writing a totally new offer, all right? And there you go. There's your information, there's the acceptance. So if there's any so the other thing that, everything else is kind of self-explanatory here. The other thing that I want to talk about is what constitutes a deal. So counteroffers. So the RPA and any subsequent counteroffers are linearly tied to each other, okay? I make an offer with these terms. The seller gives me seller's counteroffer number 1 that is subject to this RPA. You see the terms in there. Anything that you're good with, you don't address, but you have buyer's counteroffer number 1 is next because you want to address. So the seller sends you back 5 terms, right? That he wants to counter you, right? You want to accept 3 of them and you want to counter 2 more, 2 of the ones that he assigned. You then use buyer's counteroffer number 1. And that is subject to seller's counteroffer number 1, right? And so in that, you're not addressing anything that you accept. You only address the terms that you would like to alter, right? And so that's linear. RPA, seller's 1, buyer's 1. Seller's 2, buyer's 2. Seller's 3, buyer's 3. It's a linear, it's a linear view at that contract. And it creates all the terms of the contract. Addendums go off to the side. They are attached to the RPA, right? But they're not in line in the same way. There's a few other, everything else are their own kind of spin-off of the RPA and not that linear nature. But it's when that last counteroffer is signed by the last party in line, right? If it's RPA, seller counteroffer number 1, buyer counteroffer number 1, the last person on that buyer counteroffer number 1 is the seller. The seller's agreed, right? That doesn't mean everything else has to be fully executed, but it's that signature that matters. Okay, questions?
I had a question back at the liquidated damages. Which form, is it RIG form that you don't have them sign because it makes more than the 3% vulnerable? Did I get that right?
Yeah, it's the RIG form. Yeah, that's saying that you're changing the liquidated damage provision here to a new standard, right? Unless, you know, again, 20 years, never use that form.
And then my other question was, if let's say if I'm representing a buyer and we forget to remove a contingency, we missed the deadline, can the seller cancel the contract and keep the deposit and say just because they want our deposit?
Not. You have a contingency as long as you have a contingency. So this is, again, it's an active removal of contingency. You have to remove that. I doubt that you will forget to remove contingency, but I know there are agents who do, right? And in that the seller has to give you a notice to perform, And then you're like, oh, I'm sorry, let me get that for you, right? And you have 3 days to get that, or 2 days, I'm sorry, 2 days to get that unless you change it on this contract. You have 2 days to get that action completed, to get that term completed, right? And if you don't, then they can give you a cancellation. And then in that cancellation, you have 3 days. So there you go.
And keep your deposit. No.
No, not if you have not removed contingency.
Okay, that makes sense.
Only keep your deposit if you've removed the contingency and said, I am good, right? I've done all my due diligence. You've given me everything you need that you have. You told me everything I need to know. I've done my appraisal and I'm good. I've done my inspections and I'm good. And I've done my loan and we're in the good. We're on so all the ducks are in a row. And you're saying, I am going hard on this deal and taking off all my contingencies per the terms of the contract. And at that point, if something blows up and I can't close, or I decide I want out, or for whatever reason of the buyer's default, then then and only then is my money vulnerable.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions I know it's a lot of information. Let me just say this. If I can master this contract, you could too. It takes a little while. But just, I would say, have it around the house and read it. But the more you, watch these videos again, right? And just, get it ingrained into you and play with it. What I did when I was a mentor was, if anybody was, if a mentee was writing an offer, I'd say, write the offer to the best of your abilities and then send it to me and we'll talk about what needs to be changed, right? Because it's not until you get into it that you really start understanding it at a high level.
Where are the videos posted, the recorded?
So, Gilberto, they should be on our KW Larchmont YouTube channel. I'm going to check with Ed after this. I think Yvette or Jenny said that they hadn't seen them up there yet, but this is the third part, part 1, 2, and 3.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't seen them yet, but
okay.
I'm just waiting.
I'm going to call Ed right now, get them up there.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. Any other questions?
No, thank you very much.
It's a lot to consume. I get it.
Thank you.
But it's,
Thank you.
Hey, Stacy, how you doing? This contract, you have to believe in this contract and you have to submit to it because there are tens of thousands of deals that are done in California. In some jurisdictions, or in some states, I should say, there's a lawyer that comes in and administrates the sale at the end. Like we just bring the buyer and seller, and we get most of these forms kind of filled out. But it's the closing table that all of this gets fully executed by lawyers, by 2 opposing lawyers, right? So we're taking on that responsibility, and this contract protects us and our clients. I think it's a reasonable process, but every once in a while you'll get a client from another country, is when I've seen it happen, who doesn't believe in this contract. They might come from a place where contracts are a little more fluid, right? Yeah, I know I said that, but it doesn't really mean anything. That's not what this contract is. This contract is a binding legal contract that actually that creates real liability for you if you don't perform on it. So, And that's what protects us. So the less gray area conversation you can have with your clients, the better. Go ahead. What else? Anything else? If not, I'm going to go have a nice glass of water. I just talk too much. At least I didn't have to do it with a face mask on. That's, talking that much with a face mask is brutal. Brutal. All right, guys. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
so much, Joey.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
We'll do. Bye, guys.